Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to tell you a story that changed the way I look at time, effort, and the small choices we make every single day, because there was once a moment in my life when I believed that waiting was harmless, that resting without purpose was normal, and that tomorrow would always come with another chance, and I had no idea how expensive that belief really was. I remember a morning when the sun was already high in the sky, pouring through my window, and I was still lying in bed staring at my phone, scrolling through things that meant nothing, telling myself I would start later, telling myself I deserved just a few more minutes, and those minutes became hours, and those hours became days, and before I knew it, weeks had passed, and my dreams were still standing exactly where they were, untouched, unchanged, waiting for me while I pretended I was waiting for the right time. At that stage of my life, I thought inspiration was something that arrived suddenly, like lightning, and until it came, sitting idle was fine, because everyone around me seemed busy yet confused, working yet unhappy, and I convinced myself that staying still was safer than moving in the wrong direction, but what I did not realize was that staying still was itself a direction, and it was slowly taking me away from everything I wanted to become. One afternoon, I walked past an old workshop at the edge of my town, a place filled with the sound of hammers and saws and the steady rhythm of effort, and inside was an old craftsman who had been shaping wood for as long as anyone could remember, his hands rough, his back bent, his eyes calm, and something about the way he worked without hurry yet without pause caught my attention, and I stood there watching him for a long time without saying a word. When he finally noticed me, he smiled and asked why I was staring, and I told him honestly that I did not know what to do with my life. That I felt stuck, that time was passing and I was afraid I was wasting it, and he laughed softly, not in a mocking way, but in the way someone laughs when they recognize their younger self in front of them, and he said something that I still remember clearly. He said that time is like a river, and whether you swim or sleep, it will carry you forward, and the only question is where you will end up when you finally open your eyes. Those words stayed with me, but at first, they did not change me, because change is uncomfortable, and comfort is tempting, and for a while I continued doing exactly what I had always done, waking up late, delaying important work, waiting for motivation to appear, and every night I promised myself that tomorrow would be different, and every morning I broke that promise without even noticing. Then one day, something small happened, something that should not have mattered, but somehow it did. I missed an opportunity that I had been waiting for, not because I lacked talent, not because I lacked intelligence, but because I had been unprepared, because while I was sitting idle, others were practicing, learning, improving, and when the moment came, I was not ready to step forward, and someone else took the place that could have been mine. That was the first time I truly felt the weight of wasted time, not as an idea, but as a reality, and it hurt more than failure ever had, because failure at least means you tried, but regret means you never even began. From that day, I started paying attention to the way successful people around me used their time, and what I noticed surprised me. They were not always working harder than everyone else, they were not always more talented or more lucky, but they almost never sat idle without purpose. When they rested to recover, when they waited while preparing, and when they worked with focus. And slowly I began to understand that hard work is not just about long hours. It is about meaningful hours, and discipline is not about punishment, it is about direction. I decided to make one simple change, just one. I promised myself that every day, no matter how I felt, I would take one small step towards something that mattered to me, not a huge leap, not a dramatic transformation, just one honest effort. Sometimes it was reading a few pages of a book, sometimes it was practicing a skill for 20 minutes, sometimes it was writing a single page, and at first, it felt almost pointless, because progress was invisible, and patience was difficult, and my old habits kept calling me back. There were days when I failed, days when I wasted time again, days when I felt lazy and discouraged, but something inside me had shifted, because now I noticed those moments, I felt them, I understood their cost, and slowly, very slowly, consistency began to change me in ways I could not have imagined. Weeks passed, then months, and one day I realized that I no longer waited for motivation, I created it through action. I no longer feared starting, because starting had become familiar, and the projects I once dreamed about were no longer just ideas, they were becoming real, imperfect, unfinished, but real, and that was more powerful than perfection ever could be. I went back to the old workshop one evening, hoping to see the craftsman again, and when I found him, I told him about the changes I had made, about how I was finally working toward my goals, about how different I felt, and he listened quietly, nodding, shaping a piece of wood with steady hands, and when I finished, he looked at me and said that hard work does not make life easier, but it makes you stronger, and time does not reward those who wait, it rewards those who build. That sentence became a rule in my life, and I began to see time differently, not as something to kill, but as something to invest, because every minute I spent improving myself was a minute that could never be taken away from me, and every minute I wasted was a gift I had thrown aside without even opening it. There were still moments when sitting idle seemed tempting, when distractions called my name, when comfort whispered that I had done enough, but now I understood that comfort is not the enemy, stagnation is, and rest is necessary, but idleness without purpose slowly steals your future while pretending to protect your present. As years went by, the small steps I had taken began to lead me to places I once thought were unreachable. Opportunities appeared not because of luck, but because I was finally prepared to recognize them. Challenges arrived not as threats, but as tests I had trained myself to face, and confidence grew not from praise, but from the quiet knowledge that I was using my time with intention. One evening, sitting alone after a long day of work, I thought about the person I had once been, lying in bed, scrolling endlessly, waiting for life to begin, and I realized something important. That version of me was not lazy, not foolish, not hopeless, he was simply unaware that time is the most honest teacher we will ever have, because it gives the same lessons to everyone, and only our choices decide what we learn from them. If you are listening to this and you feel stuck, if you feel like your days are passing too quickly and your dreams are standing still, I want you to know that you do not need to change your entire life today, you only need to change the way you use the next hour, because greatness is not built in moments of inspiration, it is built in moments of discipline, in quiet rooms, on ordinary days, when no one is watching and no one is applauding. Never underestimate the power of beginning, even when you are tired, even when you are unsure, even when the path ahead is unclear, because motion creates clarity, effort creates confidence, and hard work creates opportunities that waiting never will. There will be times when progress feels slow, when results seem invisible, when doubt grows louder than hope, and in those moments, remember that the seeds you plant today will not bloom tomorrow, but if you stop planting, nothing will ever grow, and the future you want is built not by wishes, but by work, not by dreams, but by discipline, not by waiting, but by acting. I still rest, I still enjoy quiet moments, I still take time to breathe and reflect, but I never sit idle without purpose, because I have learned that every hour holds a choice, to become a little better or to remain the same, to move a step closer to my goals or a step further away, and over time, those tiny choices become the story of your life. So wherever you are right now, whatever you are facing, whatever dream you are holding quietly in your heart, promise yourself one thing, that you will never again let time pass without intention, that you will treat your effort with respect, that you will honor your future by working in the present, and that you will remember, always, that hard work does not guarantee success, but idleness guarantees regret. Because one day, years from now, you will look back at this moment, at this very day, and you will either thank yourself for starting, or wish with all your heart that you had, and the difference between those two futures is not talent, not luck, not circumstances, it is simply the choice to stand up, take a breath, and begin. And that is the lesson time taught me, quietly, patiently, without mercy and without favor, that life does not wait, that dreams do not chase us, that opportunity does not knock forever, and that the only way forward is through action, steady, humble, persistent action, every single day. So never sit idle again, not because rest is wrong, but because your potential is too valuable to be left unused, your time too precious to be wasted, and your future too important to be postponed. And if you remember nothing else from this story, remember this, that the moment you decide to work for your life instead of waiting for it, everything begins to change.